Welcome to ILTV News. I'm Emily Schrader, and we begin today after a weekend of war. On Friday, the IDF and Mossad launched a daring operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran on Iranian soil, targeting regime sites and nuclear facilities. This war was declared after 46 years of the mullah's genocidal commitment to the destruction of the State of Israel. Since Friday, the IDF and Mossad have been bombarding IRGC missile sites, military defense capabilities, regime infrastructure, including key energy sites, conducting targeted assassinations of regime officials, and striking nuclear sites heavily. Thus far, the IDF has destroyed the defense systems of the regime repeatedly, has taken out 9 nuclear scientists, has eliminated the IRGC chain of command, and killed the chief of staff of the Iranian military. In response, Israel has already received 7 waves of ballistic missile attacks targeting civilian areas and is expecting more. At least 13 Israelis have been confirmed killed in these attacks and hundreds more injured. But here's what you need to know. This war didn't start with the IDF's courageous strikes on regime targets. It started when the death cult of Khomeinism hijacked the nation of Iran in 1979, aided by communist and Islamist terror groups, including Yasser Arafat's PLO. Since then, the regime has poured its resources into destabilizing the entire Middle East and funding proxy terror groups that murder and maim countless innocents across the region, including their own people. But their terror isn't limited to the region. They've kidnapped and murdered U.S. citizens for decades, including through their terror proxy Hezbollah, and even attempted to assassinate U.S. President Trump. They have funded and armed terror proxies such as the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. And the weakness of the West towards the regime in their non-enforcement of sanctions and their hostage diplomacy helped enable the October 7th massacre. Now Israel has done what no other nation had the courage to do: strike inside Iran to eliminate the regime's nuclear program and neutralize the world's most dangerous terrorist regime. After evidence was revealed showing the regime intended to build 10 nuclear bombs and was plotting to launch an existential war against Israel. As expected, the Islamic Republic of Iran has escalated, striking Israel in multiple salvos. The regime has launched a massive counterattack, firing hundreds of ballistic missiles and suicide drones directly into Israeli civilian populations. Missiles struck Tel Aviv, Haifa, Bat Yam, Ramat Gan, Rehovot, Jerusalem, and Tamra, cities, not military bases. Entire buildings have been flattened. Families have been destroyed. While Israel continues strikes on military targets, what the regime is doing are blatant war crimes. But this isn't just Israel's fight. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the greatest threat to global security today. It's the head of a terror octopus with tentacles in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Africa, and even Latin America. Its goal is simple: destroy Israel, eradicate Western democracy, and advance this red-black alliance at home and abroad. But this evil will be defeated, even as the IDF strikes regime targets. Something incredible is happening inside of Iran. Brave Iranians are taking to the rooftops, chanting death to Khamenei, not death to Israel, death to their own dictator. The people of Iran, who have been beaten, tortured, imprisoned, and raped by this regime, know the truth. This war isn't against them. It's against the IRGC. Israel is not the enemy. The enemy is the regime that kills its own children in the streets. Furthermore, Israel is not standing alone. The United States, the UK, Germany, and France are all assisting with aerial refueling of Israeli planes. As it stands now, airspace has been shut down across the region. Nuclear negotiations with Iran have been canceled, and oil prices have spiked. But let me be clear, this is a defining moment for the free world. If we fail to stop the Islamic Republic now, we invite further escalation, nuclear proliferation, global terrorism, and potentially regional collapse. Israel is fighting on the front lines for itself, for the Iranian people, and for the entire free world. Together, the State of Israel and the Iranian people will be victorious in defeating the Nazis of our time, because we have no other choice. For a better future, the entire world must stand with Israel. Now, as mentioned, Iran's ballistic missile barrages have directly targeted civilian areas as communities across the country are completely devastated by these direct hits. A total of 13 and, as of a few minutes ago, 14 people have been killed, and now more than 300 people are injured after building collapses, shrapnel injuries, and conditions of panic. Some were even trapped in the rubble overnight. A large residential building in Bat Yam in central Israel took a direct hit from a ballistic missile, with the damage so severe it partially collapsed and caused other buildings around it to be devastated. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian got to see the devastating sight for herself today.
We are currently in Bat Yam at one of the Iranian missile impact sites. The scene here is just so immense. I'm going to move to the side so you can see. This is the building. You can see the floor is completely falling to the ground. There's still search and rescue teams on site right now. There's actually still people unaccounted for. Israelis are saying this is a completely unprecedented type of impact this has had. I want to just show you the remains that are on the ground. Look at this Barbie doll. This is just from one of the homes that was completely impacted here. You can just see the pile of rubble that sits behind me right here in Bat Yam.
Well, Israel's Operation Rising Lion is fully deployed, with the Israeli Air Force pounding Islamic Republic regime sites with ongoing waves of airstrikes targeting nuclear and military sites almost at will, with Iranian air defenses largely destroyed or ineffective. The Air Force is now also targeting Iranian oil depots. Most recent reports from Iranian sources claim that in the last few hours alone, the IDF has targeted the Iranian Air Force headquarters, the Tehran police headquarters, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, the Ministry of Intelligence, the IRGC headquarters, and the Iranian Islamic Consultative Assembly building. There are also unconfirmed reports that IRGC leader Ismail Qani was assassinated. We will keep you updated with further updates on that issue. In addition to that, we just saw a barrage of approximately 50 rockets, ballistic missiles coming from the Islamic Republic of Iran just moments ago, actually delaying our broadcast here at ILTV News. The overnight attacks as well. We have an update from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
After decades of preparation, the war against Iran and its nuclear program is underway and ongoing. Since Friday, the Air Force has been pounding military targets all over Iran. Israel hit nuclear sites in Tehran, and the Natanz enrichment site was significantly damaged. The initial surprise attack destroyed Iranian anti-aircraft and opened the way for waves of airstrikes that are following. Targeted strikes have killed the chief of the Republican Guard, the head of the army, top commanders, and leading scientists. Operation Rising Lion follows decades of warnings against the Iranian nuclear program and military preparations to thwart it, with a coordinated offensive against the Islamic Republic, striking nuclear sites, military facilities, army bases, and senior leadership. There have been multiple waves of Israeli strikes. Over 200 aircraft were involved in the opening salvo, and fighter jets have reportedly dropped many hundreds of munitions on over 100 targets. Operation Rising Lion is directed primarily at Iran's nuclear program after the army assessed that Iran currently has enough enriched uranium to build 15 nuclear weapons and had reached the point of no return in pursuit of a nuclear weapon. The head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, told the UN that an Israeli strike had destroyed the above-ground enrichment plant in Natanz. Iran confirmed that its Fordow nuclear facility sustained damages. A group of Iranian nuclear scientists were hit in a targeted operation. They were found based on intelligence that they were gathering to advance the development of nuclear weapons. Satellite images confirmed damages to Iran's ballistic nuclear arsenal. The operation is ongoing and could last for weeks, with the goal at the end of the operation that there will be no more nuclear threat from the Islamic Republic.
Well, as these strikes are ongoing in key Iranian cities, joining us to discuss the IDF's effort on this front is Miri Eisen of the Institute for Counterterrorism and Avi Melamed, a Middle East expert. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. Avi, I'd like to start with you. How devastating have these IDF strikes been on regime targets, and how weak is the regime now as a result?
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's very substantial in two major perspectives. One is the damage on the ground itself and the different ways it has been done. Basically, right now, the Israeli Air Force is just taking a walk across the Iranian sky. But not less significant is the fact that we have to remember that this regime that has been inflicting death and destruction across the Middle East for the last 40 years basically sustained no ramifications. The last time I think that the Iranian people experienced something that even close to what they experience right now was back then in the 1980s during the war between Iraq and Iran. This is something very substantial, particularly in the context that it, of course, negatively radiates on one of the most significant pillars of strength of the mullah's regime, and this is its deterrence image. It definitely has been significantly shaking. on top of already what he has sustained following the weakening of what is called the axis of resistance. So right now we are looking at something that is an accumulative process that definitely has a lot of impact on the ground. Obviously, the question is what's going to be the ramifications of that down the road.
Now, Colonel Eisen, we've seen devastating ballistic missile attacks on Israeli targets just a few moments ago in one case. What kind of capabilities does this regime currently possess, and what can we expect to see in the coming weeks?
The Islamic regime is both a producer of weapons, a developer of weapons, and they produce in their military industry, and have done so for many years, ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach not only from Tehran, from all of Iran to Israel, hey, they can go all the way to Berlin or London, or for that matter, to India or Malaysia. So on all sides of the globes, they should work out. In addition, they export and have for many years, and especially in the Russia-Ukraine war, they make and produce a lot of different types of drones. Drones can be suicide drones, the kinds that have within their nose essentially a small relative payload. But the issue with drones is that you can put into them a kind of path where they zigzag all over the place, and it's harder to intercept. The missiles have a very direct path, 7-8 minutes. The drones from Islamic regime to get to Israel can take 7, 8, and even 9 hours. So all of these different elements have been used against Israel in the last 48 hours. In addition to the different type of drones, both the ones that have payloads, the ones that are suicide drones, and the different type of missiles, let's not forget the type of what I'm going to call ground troops. And I'm saying that because there's no question that what Hamas wanted to do from October 7th was to get not just all the missiles and drones on board, but also to have ground attacks. And right now I'm also pointing out that there are Shiites on the ground, both in Iraq, certainly in Iran, that would very much like to come to our borders. Add that in as a future possibility. Let's see both what Syria and what Jordan do, because that's something that they have to get through to be able to get to our borders.
Now, one of the things we have seen in recent days is overall support from the U.S. President Trump for Israel's operations, although they're claiming they are not directly involved, despite the fact it seems that Israel wants them to get involved. I want to ask both of you before we have to wrap up, do you think that the U.S. will get involved ultimately in this, or perhaps only on a military supply front, providing potentially the B-2 bombers that can more effectively target some of these nuclear sites? Colonel Eisen, I'd like to start with you.
I think that there will be some involvement. There always is in any case, because part of these systems that have been working together for the last 20 minutes, it's not the first time that Iran has attacked us, let alone all of the other proxies. So we're already working together. There's a difference between that and between the United States taking United States Air Force planes to bomb. I actually don't think that that's something that they want to have happen. I think they're going to try to avoid it. What that means is harder work for the IDF, the IAF, and I think that that's where we'll be going. A quiet acquiescence, but not necessarily direct involvement. Time will tell.
Now, Avi, do you think that we're going to see U.S. involvement or further U.S. support for these operations against the Islamic regime in Iran?
Look, I think that President Trump's blueprint is, roughly speaking, to put pressure using Israel currently, militarily speaking, in order to bring the Iranian regime back to the negotiation table much more weakened in a way that they will basically subscribe to the demands that President Trump was putting on the table. So at this point, I don't see the United States proactively involved. And I think that in the end of the day, the biggest question that we have to ask ourselves is that whether we'll get to this point of this going back to the negotiation, is President Trump's priorities and agenda at that point will be totally coordinated with Israel? Is it going to be totally overlapping with the Israeli position or not necessarily? I'm deliberately putting this question mark because I want to remind us that President Trump ceased or stopped out of the blue the military confrontation with the Houthis. It was not in consultation with Israel. It left Israel alone to deal with the Houthi threat. So that's the reason why I'm putting that in a big question mark. Once we'll get to this point, we'll have to see whether there are going to be full coordination or maybe partial, this is very significant.
Last question to Colonel Eisen. We know that this regime has pledged to wipe Israel off the map. This is something they've been committed to from its inception. And yet we see Iranian people not so much on board with this genocidal agenda. There have been waves of protests for years. Even now, we've seen support calls for death to the Ayatollah from the rooftops of some of the neighborhoods in Iran. What do you expect to see in response from the Iranian people after these pretty significant strikes on major Iranian cities at regime sites?
I would like to hope that they would be standing up and calling out against. But Emily, I'm going to be very straightforward. The Islamic regime is a type of very harsh dictatorship that holds all of the capabilities, arrests people, as you described at the beginning of the program, brutally has oppressed those people for 45 years, and it's very difficult to act against them. In the fact that we took out all of that hierarchy, all of those decision makers, that most definitely makes them feel they could do something, but that doesn't mean that they have the capability. So I think that we should really, in that sense, be very wary of what we think will happen. I think that those who remain, they immediately appointed different people to be in the decision-making places of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, etc. And the people in Iran right now feel very helpless. And I say that because Israel attacks them. The Iranian regime does not protect them. And in that sense, right now, it's to be in between a rock and a hard place. So I hope for them that they can stand up, but I think that that's a really challenging thing to do.
All right, and we have heard from Iranians on the ground that they are indeed frightened. They've already been threatened by besieged IRGC forces on the ground in some of the major neighborhoods where they're expecting protests. And despite that, we did receive notice just a few hours ago that there is protests being organized, hopefully for tonight, by the Iranian people. So as you said, between a rock and a hard place, we can only hope for the best for the people of Iran as the IDF carries out these necessary operations. I want to thank you, Colonel Miri Eisen and Avi Melamed, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, with Operation Rising Lion in full force, this is a moment that demands bold action. You can play a part in Israel's strength, not just in words, but in action. Go now to invest in Israel bonds. Your investment is more than just a financial contribution. It's a declaration of support as Israel defends freedom, life, and the values we all hold dear. Because Israel's strength is our shield. Now is the time to stand strong with Israel. Invest in Israel bonds today. Well, Israeli officials have confirmed efforts to target the Houthi terror group chief in an airstrike last night in Yemen. It's unclear whether Mohammed al-Ghamari was killed or injured in the attack, but Israeli media reports that al-Ghamari was believed to have been meeting with other Houthi leaders, including its Air Force commander, at the time of the strike, which was directed at his command headquarters. Ambulances were reportedly called to the scene, and there were casualties. Al-Ghamari trained in Iran and coordinated between Tehran and the Houthis and oversees the Houthi missile program. Since March 18th, when Israel resumed its offensive in Gaza, the Houthis have launched over 50 missiles and at least a dozen drones at Israel last night. The Houthis again fired a ballistic missile at Israel, which was successfully intercepted. Well, Israel has faced devastating attacks on civilian targets in recent days from the Islamic regime, which has many people asking, why is the Iron Dome unable to intercept all of these missiles? Well, joining us now is a former U.S. Air Force intelligence commander and a national security analyst, Travis Hawley, who is currently in Israel himself, to discuss more about the defensive capabilities of Israel in response to Iranian weaponry. Travis, thank you so much for joining us today. Firstly, I'd like to ask your response to the question I'm hearing from many Israelis on the ground. Why are we seeing so many hits on Israeli cities?
Well, people need to understand that the Iron Dome actually was not designed to intercept ballistic missiles. The Iron Dome is designed for shorter range rockets and mortars. Think of the weaponry that Hamas shoots towards the homeland. That is more the Iron Dome's responsibility. However, the Iron Dome can step in as sort of a last resort to help shoot down some of these ballistic missiles. People need to understand that there is an integrated air defense system, an IADS, that Israel has, and it's multiple layers of multiple multiple systems. The system that is designed primarily to shoot down ballistic missiles is the Arrow system, Arrow 2 or the newer Arrow 3. So in the event that Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 are unable to shoot down these ballistic missiles, to intercept them, say because there's a massive volume of them and there may be some misses, the Iron Dome does step in. So it's really not the Iron Dome's fault, if I can use that word, for missing some of these. It is somewhat of a failure of the entire integrated air defense system, but it's really hard to have a high degree of success or a perfect 100% when they're shooting salvos of 50 to 100 ballistic missiles at one time.
What can the U.S. or other allies do, if anything, in order to fortify Israel's defense capabilities? You've walked us through some of the technicalities, but is there more that can be done? Is there technology that Israel doesn't have that perhaps U.S. or other allies could assist in? I mean, we've already seen some support from other countries in shooting down these rockets, but is there more?
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned that. The THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, which is a U.S. managed system, is deployed in Israel. That is common knowledge. So that U.S. system is attempting to help in this case when, let's say, the Arrow misses and Iron Dome misses. This is actually, THAAD is designed for ballistic missiles as well. So this has been added, deployed into the existing Israeli system. So you can see, even with U.S. support, it is still impossible really to get all of the interceptions done. If I did have one piece that may be helpful, is simply just to have more systems, right? So that you have more strikes, more attempts at intercepting them. But what Israel has and what the U.S. has is state of the art. So there really is nothing better than what we're using right now. It really comes down to potentially having more systems or just having more time.
All right, well, hopefully we can get more support from the United States and other allies as we battle these incoming ballistic missiles. I want to thank you for joining us. Stay safe, Travis.
Thank you.
Well, the drama and details of the first hours of the Israeli attack on Iran are still to be told and under censorship. But one of the most talked about elements in this surprise attack was the operation of a Mossad drone base operating deep inside of Iran. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
According to the Israeli media, the Mossad set up a drone base and used special vehicles to deploy kamikaze drones in Iran. Closely echoing Ukraine's recent spiderweb operation in Russia, the operation is being hailed as a stunning new success by Israel's intelligence service. Released footage shows the Mossad agents deep inside Iran, assembling explosive drones aimed at targets near Tehran. The precision weapons were reportedly launched from trucks smuggled into the country with a drone base hidden somewhere near Tehran. The base was established well in advance of Friday's attacks and was used to destroy Iranian air defense near the capital. Mossad had earned a reputation internationally for creative espionage, technological innovation, and, when called for, ruthless violence in defense of Israel. Over decades, the Mossad has built up deep networks of informants and agent resources. Last year's Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated by a Mossad bomb placed in his Tehran government guest house.
Well, let's take a look now at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected around the country with anticipated rocket showers, but also lows of around 21 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow's forecast is anticipating more clear skies and highs of 31 degrees Celsius or 89 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel.